There are people who very thoughtfully say that they don't want to be people managers. They want to be those individual contributors and drive as much impact as possible. But with founders, it's often that promotion of individual contributors into people leaders, which too often leads to having to remove that person from the organization because suddenly they're the head of engineering and they lack those skills that are required to scale an engineering team from, let's say, 3 to 30.
They say it's lonely at the top. They're right. But you don't have to scale your company alone. Welcome to the Scaling CEO. I'm Glenn Gow, the CEO Success Coach. On this podcast, I sit down with top performing CEOs to uncover the hidden patterns and frameworks behind their success so you can avoid common pitfalls and accelerate your company's growth. Now, on to the show. My guest today is Mark Bluvshtein, the CEO of Collage HR. Now, Mark's background isn't typical for a tech CEO. He started his career as a chess grandmaster, representing Canada on the world stage and even taking down the world's #2 ranked player. He was Canada's Chess Player of the Year 4 times. He then made a hard pivot into the business world. He did a stint in investment banking, co-founded a startup, and got his MBA. But where it gets really interesting for us is his experience in the trenches of scaling. He was a key leader at Wave during the explosive growth from 90 to over 300 people, culminating in a $500 million acquisition by H&R Block. He then helped scale Humi through its Series B funding and another acquisition. Today, he's at the helm of Collage HR, a company focused on building HR and payroll software for Canadian businesses. Mark's entire journey is about mastering complex systems, first a chessboard, now a high-growth company. He says he loves building things, solving hard problems, and helping people grow. We're going to dig into how a grandmaster's mind approaches the game of scaling a business and a career. Mark, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me here, Glenn.
Mark, you went from being a chess grandmaster to a tech CEO. Earlier, you had said in chess, you have to be very objective about your strengths and your weaknesses. You can't lie to yourself. As a CEO, scaling a company, what's the biggest blind spot you see in other leaders where they seem to be lying to themselves?
From what I've seen, they assume that what they have today in the business and the team is fixed. It's the right path where in reality, everything about the business could change depending on the needs of the market. But CEOs often have that blind spot of thinking that things should be the way that they are and not actually seeing that everything can be changed about the business. Absolutely everything. When we look at companies like Twitter and the evolution of Twitter over time, they completely changed the business model. Lots of other companies have changed the business model. So everything in a business can actually be changed.
I like that. One of my favorite stories about CEOs recognizing they need to change is around the company Slack. Slack started as a gaming company. They were trying to build online games, and they started communicating to each other through this tool somebody built. And all of a sudden they realized they had a tool that everybody was interested in using, and that became Slack. And so I really believe that's true. You need to be open to massive change when you're a CEO, to look for new opportunities or realize what you're pursuing right now isn't quite working. And so what can we change? Next question. You were inside Wave during its massive scaling journey. If you could go back to the start of that hypergrowth period, what's the one insight about scaling that, had you known it then, would have saved you a lot of time and energy and effort?
We say no to a lot more things. One of the key lessons that I've had over the years is you should just say no to as many things as possible. Focus on what really matters and execute on that relentlessly. Because in a growing startup, there are many ideas at all times, and there's never a shortage of ideas. You should actually be doing a lot less things by saying no to as many things as possible, and that helps the whole team, and that helps the execution on the most important things.
I really like that. So I work with CEOs on management frameworks. One of them, a popular one, is OKRs.
Mhm.
And in that framework, every 90 days, you choose a small number of things you're going to focus on. And the big point about that is we're also deciding to not work on a lot of things. And we're going to put those aside, even though they sound really interesting. But to your point, they're not important. So I love that answer. Let's talk about
Do you mind
struggle.
if I jump in actually on
Oh,
the
no, please do.
90-day cycles? And that's actually what I've adopted as well. It's an OKR-like framework for the businesses that I'm at, where on a quarterly basis, we have focus areas by department. And those are the things that we need to move the needle on. Focus area with the key metrics that we're trying to drive across that, and the leaders are accountable for that. And and as the CEO, am responsible for the overall business and identifying the opportunities in the business as a whole. And every leader is responsible for also identifying the opportunities in their area and also figuring out what to say no to. And we don't always agree on the journey, and that's a good thing. As we and frankly, sometimes I come up with ideas that are very bad uh, opportunities to pursue, where team team provides very good feedback, and we do not go down that path, which is very helpful in terms of collaboration.
It's great. I suffered from the same thing as a CEO where I was always coming up with what I thought were great ideas. And I would come to the team and say, we should go do this. And I taught them to do something for me, which ultimately I hated. Well, not ultimately, initially I hated, but ultimately was the right thing. If I came to them with a new idea and they already had a set of priorities, they had to come back to me and say, Glenn, are you going to change the priorities? Are you going to make this priority number one? Do you want me to stop doing something else? And I realized I now had to decide, did I really want to change what I asked them to do initially? Or is this just a good idea we need to talk about? And that was very powerful for me because it was very rare that I actually wanted them to pick up and change what they were doing right now. So let's talk about struggle. You co-founded a startup, Actify, that ultimately closed down. Many CEOs I work with are struggling right now, but don't know when to change strategy or when to quit. Looking back, how does a leader find the clarity to make the call between a tough grind and a dead end?
That was a hard decision, and I was talking to another co-founder earlier this week who making a huge pivot with their business, and a very tough decision with the team there. It is about product market fit and trying to identify what the opportunity is, and always listening and accepting that our thoughts from a year ago need to evolve, and we need to accept the information that's come in over the last year and over whatever period of time we're assessing here, and try to build a new story, a new understanding of the world. And if our view of the world is not changing over time, then something is wrong for us as leaders, for us as CEOs and founders, and we need to continue taking in all the data. And in the story of Actify, we didn't have product market fit. We could continue grinding, building out a business. It would never become a huge success. It could be potential success, but we didn't see the opportunity there. It was a very competitive landscape, and we didn't have a differentiation. We were at a real disadvantage in terms of going against bigger players that were more established, that had great brands. And even though we thought we were doing things better when founding, we saw that the buyer didn't feel the same way, and the other challenges were never going to help us. Well, we're never going to have us overcome those challenges and get to the scale that we wanted.
That's great. You've introduced a theme to us, which is we need to pay attention to what's happening around us. And in this case, product market fit and the competitive landscape. And we need to continually evolve. And if there's no evolution for the company where it can be successful, maybe it's just the wrong idea right now. You've held senior roles at great companies, but taking the title of CEO at Collage HR is a different level of responsibility. What was the biggest personal upgrade, a mindset, a habit, or a skill you had to make in yourself to truly scale into the CEO role?
There are lots of areas where I feel like I had to evolve, but the main one was being comfortable having people who report to me knowing a lot more about their area of business, being very comfortable to move away from a lot of areas and not get involved in a lot of things, and really having that trust with the team to course, delegate a lot of decisions, not get involved in a lot of conversations, and say, this is good enough, even when I'm seeing things that I think are not perfect, but actually saying, this is good enough, and we shouldn't be spending more time on different areas depending on the impact. And this is a place where 5 years ago I was managing a team of 40 people, and I was extremely involved in almost every decision, and this was detrimental to business. It was detrimental to me because I was extremely busy, and it was hectic. It was detrimental to the leaders on my team, where they felt like they needed to get me looped in
Right.
to those situations. But the main issue was really how detrimental it was for the business, because I was so involved in so many decisions, and I wasn't focused on the things that only I can do, the opportunities that I could pursue, where I could have driven a lot more value for the organization at that point by trusting the people managers, helping them grow in a different way, and really driving value in areas where nobody else could drive value for the business.
I love that, and I love what you said about helping them grow in a different way, right? So it's there's an element of, as the CEO, as you're scaling, of giving up certain things, which is not always easy. And yet, if we do give it up, if we trust in our people, if we become great at delegating to those people, and we put the right people in the right positions, then you're right. You can focus on what you're best at. So that's a really interesting transition. You're in the business of people operations with Collage HR. What's one fundamental truth about managing people during a high growth phase that most founders and CEOs get wrong?
That individual contributors need to grow into people managers. I've seen that done poorly across different organizations, and whenever I speak to founders, I see that mistake being made, where the best individual contributors, the developers, the salespeople, in any role, they're often pushed to become team leaders, and then you're taking away their superpower. They must be the 10x developer, and then when they're managing a team of 10 developers, suddenly the output hasn't changed a whole lot versus what they were doing themselves. So this idea of needing to push people to manage teams and assuming that they will drive the same type of impact, and I've seen evolution in people as well. And say 10 years ago, a lot more people wanted to be people managers. Today, there are people who very thoughtfully say that they don't want to be people managers. They want to be those individual contributors and drive as much impact as possible. But with founders, it's often that promotion of individual contributors into people leaders, which too often leads to having to remove that person from the organization, because suddenly they're the head of engineering, and they lack those skills that are required to scale an engineering team from, let's say, 3 to 30. That first engineer is often not the right person to lead a team of 30 engineers, and that should be thoughtfully considered with co-founders, and also not just assuming that people need VP titles very quickly. Being very thoughtful about the evolution of the team as a whole and the individual contributors, and bringing in the right people as part of that process. Another mistake that I see in this evolution of an organization is bringing in uh, professional people managers, as some people would call them, people who love or are, let's say, good at managing big teams, but don't get their hands dirty, don't get very tactical. Where I think that when you're bringing people into a startup, they do need that ability to jump right in, execute. Where I personally love working in teams where people get very involved. I get very involved in some things, where on the marketing side, I am very involved uh, today as well, because I feel like that's where I can drive value. And bring in professional people managers often reduces the velocity. Where if they're unsure as to what's happening on the ground, if they're unable to make decisions at a code level, for example, that's quite harmful. It's interesting to look at a company like Shopify, who of course has grown tremendously, and their senior leaders are expected to do some individual contributor work. They're expected to dig in and write code, for example, on the engineering side, which is quite incredible, and it leads by example. And those people are very involved, um, which is very interesting and very different from that professional manager mindset.
Yeah, I think the professional manager can play a very important role at a certain size of company. But when you're going through a growth phase, what I like is the concept of the player coach. Yes, you're going to have a team reporting to you, but you're also going to be maybe carrying your own quota, or you're going to be writing your own code, or you're going to be developing marketing content. You are going to be in that role, actually doing some of the work because that's what's needed at a certain phase of growth. It's not until you get pretty substantially large that you actually need that professional manager. And to your point, maybe you're going to create a culture where you never have that. Everyone's always a player coach.
Exactly,
So,
and just to add to that, the player coach mentality also can vary in terms of the range of playing and coaching.
mhm,
Where I've always benefited from having those conversations with managers of how much are you expected to play versus coach, and that's also helped me because if I'm a player coach doing 90% playing, I'm definitely not doing my job.
right.
So finding that right balance for myself and everybody else.
Excellent point. The last topic is my favorite topic. It's AI. So, chess is a game of deep calculation and predictable rules. Now you're scaling a company as AI begins to rewrite the rules of business in real time. How does the rise of AI change your strategic thinking about scaling Collage HR?
AI is on everybody's minds these days, and of course, it's on the minds of my team, our clients as well. And I'm trying to understand where it can make the team more efficient in terms of which areas, and also make our clients more efficient. Really help our clients on that front. Um, Also, trying to make sure that it doesn't have a negative impact on the team. So trying to work with the leaders to identify the areas where today it can drive positive impact and how we could potentially learn about the future as well. So on the engineering side, um, using it in some specific cases where it can help. Same thing on the marketing side, same thing on the sales side, and continuing to learn and having our thinking evolve on that front where we really don't know where AI will be incorporated in the teams in 5 years. What I'm pretty sure about is that every member of my team will be using AI in one way or another. So we need to continue making some steps in terms of using AI in a smart way today in teams, testing it, not overusing it. We shouldn't be doing everything with AI and then having PowerPoint slides that are not making any sense, which I've also seen at companies today. So just continuing to make progress and learning that in that process. And it's a very simple return on investment when I think about it, where ChatGPT subscription costs $20 per month. If it can save me an hour per month, that's a great return on investment for me
Yeah,
and for any member of the team. So it doesn't necessarily mean use it for as many things as possible, but identify the use cases where it can help today and also evolve over time. And then for our clients, we did introduce an AI resume screener, which actually reviews each resume and gives a score from 0% to 100% based on the prompt that the client or the HR manager put in place, and also provides a summary of that candidate, which compares the resume to the prompt they provided, which is driving tremendous impact for our clients already. So that was our first use case of AI inside of the platform, which has driven great results. We'll continue finding ways to make it more fruitful for our clients to save them time.
that's fantastic. Thank you for sharing your approach on AI. Mark, how can people reach you?
Anybody who's looking to reach me can find me on LinkedIn. Would love to connect. And anybody who is looking for HR and payroll software, Collage HR is here to help.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me, Glenn.
That's a wrap for today's episode of The Scaling CEO. If you found this valuable, be sure to like, subscribe, and share with a fellow CEO who could benefit. If you're listening on Apple or Spotify, please give us a quick rating as it really helps more people find the show. I'm Glenn Gow, the CEO Success Coach. See you next time for more proven strategies to grow your business and leadership.